Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group N4AM1103A. I'm gonna present to Madam Nurhanani Aflizan binti Muhammad Rosli under the topic of inflation and employment of China. But first, let us get to know to our group members. First, we have Muhammad Faiz bin Nasharuddin. Second, we have Karin Jazlina binti Muhammad Khalid alias Abdul Majid. Then we have Adila Shuhada binti Shafi'i. Next we have Muhammad Emir Iskandar bin Muhammad Amran. Next we have Muhammad Aziz Ashraf bin Sa'dun. And lastly we have Muhammad Amirul Hakimi bin Muhammad Nurdin. So now, without wasting our time, let us get to know more the information about the topic of inflation and employment of China.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Karin Jasina binti Muhammad Khalid. My matric number 2020556585. Introductions. Economics may be described as a science of transdisciplinary, social and behavior. Economic study is therefore focused on explaining the behavior of decision makers. Economics also describes the ramifications of decision making at the microeconomic, macroeconomic, and political level that influence society. Such an examination needs an interdisciplinary approach for various decision makers, economic decision makers, particularly private families, companies, and government. China is the world's most populated country with a huge staff. Chinese national economies have had sound, durable, and fast growth since their reform and open-up strategy was pursued in the late 1970s. However, Chinese government still has a hard, arduous, and urgent work of the employment issues raising from economic system reforms, industry structure modification, and technology innovations. The Chinese government places significance to work and consider employment as a primary priority of the livelihood of its people and the top strategy to ensure social stability. Taking account of national circumstance, the government of China has studied worldwide experience and drew upon it. Gradually, improved its law system and has drawn up and pursued a set of proactive employment policies. The government in China is committed to promoting jobs through the growing its national economy, modifying industrial structuring, promoting reform of its economic and political system, harmonizing urban-rural economic development, and enhancing social security. It took several effective steps and did everything it could to increase jobs, to grow the scope of work, and maintain.
Hi, I'm Muhammad Ismail. Will present to you about public policy in a selected country, which is China. The reform of employment policy in China was started in 1978 and has made China a well-organized country. China gross domestic product has increased after 3 decades after this employment policy reform. China gross domestic product increased from 362.4 billion yuan, equivalent to 53.3 billion US dollar in 1978, to 30.067 trillion yuan, equivalent to 4.42 trillion US dollar in 2008. Indirectly, employment policy in China has increased by 9% in 2008. It makes China a rapidly developing country from their economic policy. Labor's law and policy in China were enacted by the Ministry of Labor in 1982. The new Ministry of Labor was replaced by the old one as a reform to the old policy aimed at implementing social security policy, including labor's management and further development of security policies, workers and social. The new ministry has also set up new sector and departmental departments under the Ministry of Civil Affairs and the Ministry of Public Health. This has indirectly established labor regulation and also provides protection to labor and further increase the well-being of workers regardless of the public sector to the private sector. This policy discusses the employment laws and policies in China in great detail. The focus of this policy is on the policy and is closely related to the oppressed group of workers, including workers from the elderly and migrant workers, not to mention women's workers. Next, the employment policy in China discuss all employment policy and legislation, and the main target of the policy is to highlight the quality of employment in China. In the next section, this policy describes the reform in the domestic economy of China and their impacts. Next, the employment of this policy in China also focus on the context of workers coming from rural China. In China, their policy focus more on the quality of employment. This brief use quality of employment framework to discuss the effect of public policies in China. The discussion is on China economic policy cover 4 dimensions of employment, namely development and learning, health and safety, compensation and benefit for workers, as well as employment forecasting. The first policy touched about minimum wage. In the 1994 Labour Law has implemented a policy following the minimum wage for every worker in China in particular. In the early stage, this minimum wage policy has implemented in response to labour's abuse among employers. Employees in private companies have to face the problem of low wage despite working overtime. This also includes employees who are in private companies working without pay. The 1994 Labour Law in China clarifies the role of state government and employers to implement a minimum wage policy for each of their employees. The salary of each these employees must not be lower than the minimum level. Since the implementation of the minimum wage policy in 1996, studies have shown that the minimum wage has not matched the wage rates increase from 1996 to 2006. This data is clearly like operation of private sector worker and the rest of injustice, and it has increased of 13.5% to 1,789 yuan per month, while the social minimum wage has increased by 200 to 538 yuan per month, and there is an increase of 9.9% per year. The graph below shows the minimum wage for the 5 major cities in China in 2008. Each city has difference in setting the minimum wage for their employees. For example, in 2008, large urban cities such as Beijing, Shanghai and Shenzhen adjust the minimum wage according to suitability and to keep pace with high inflation rate. The second policy is about workplace safety. Employers' responsibility for workers' rights regarding employee safety have been given under the Labour Law 1994. This law has stated that employers should be responsible for creating and ensuring the safety of their employees. To prevent an accident in the workplace from happening, employers need to teach specifically about employee safety procedures. Employers should also provide special training so that these workers can obtain guaranteed safety because in the 1994 Labour Law, the safety of workers is also a priority. The Production Safety Law 2002 stated that employers must ensure that each employee has insurance coverage for each individual. Employers have to pay insurance premiums to protect their employees. If their employee suffers an internal injury while working, the employee is entitled to a compensation claim from their employers. The third policy is about working hours and paid leave. According to the 1994 Labour Law, employees are not allowed to work overtime. This means that these workers or laborers work only 44 hours a week. Workers in China today usually work 5 days a week with 2 days off. With this step, a balance between work and daily life can be achieved, and employees can achieve a better quality of life to ensure that the health of the employees is guaranteed. Employees should not extend their working hours by more than 1 hour in general. Based on the 1994 Labour Law as well, employees must follow all policies and laws that have been set in order to maximize the output of the company and indirectly can ensure well-being of employees. After working for more than 1 year continuously, employees in the company are entitled to pay annual leave, and this law has been stipulated in the Labour Law 1994. Employers are also entitled to annual paid leave even if they have only been working for a year in the company, provided that the employee has been registered by his or her employers that has employment record registered with the local labour department. If employees surrender their annual leave to the company has to pay as much as 300% compensation of the employee's salary. Table 1 display the entitled paid leave in accordance to employee's year of employment.
Inflation problem in China. Chinese inflation fears are on the ascent because of expanding item costs. This has brought about an inflation in maker value swelling, while customer value swelling stays leveled out since the economy has not completely moved on after the coronavirus pandemic. Purchaser value inflation is not taking off, and buyer spending is yet failing to meet expectation. The National Bank is probably not going to eliminate liquidity from the economy. This implies that the economy has been functioning admirably. However, the interest for item is not inordinate. China's administration is truly adept on conveying future approaches and has unmistakably expressed that it is more worried about working on monetary development and taking action against gentle swelling. It is likewise on the ground that the Chinese economy is proceeding to recuperate after the coronavirus pandemic desolated the economy. The main cause of inflation is demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation arises as demand by consumers of products and services increases so much that it exceeds supply because products can make enough to satisfy the demand. If the seller does not raise the price, they will run out of sales. Then they immediately realize that they now have the opportunities to raise price. If the seller do that, automatically they make inflation happen. Next causes is cost push inflation. Cost push inflation happens while there is a supply shortage joined with sufficient demand to permit the maker to increase prices. As an example of push inflation is the impact of an oil stunt which pointedly reduced the supply of oil and other petroleum goods. Petroleum products represent as an input useful for a huge
for a huge part of goods and services across the economy as the price of these significant input great increments, so does the price of the end goods and services, bringing in inflation. Cost boosts inflation just outcomes an impermanent expansion of inflation, except it's accommodated by monetary policy. Next is the effect in inflation in China, which is the first point is high swelling that has when with the new quick monetary development has met the gross domestic product development pace of the present China profoundly dubious. Second point is overinvestment and unfruitful advancement in the eastern area, which is financed by abundant cash printing and a focal spending shortfall. The impacts of swelling have for the most part been borne by the helpless districts. Next is unemployment in China. The first point is the joblessness rate in China has been genuinely steady at around 4% throughout the most recent couple of years. Then, Communist legacy full business strategy truly has assumed a significant part in monetary contemplations of the Chinese government. The cause of unemployment in China, it is because first is workers' lack of skills. They did not have enough qualification of education for the job. Not all jobs can be applied unless existing skill and education fulfill the criteria of the available jobs. The reason is some industries may require a different skill and a new idea to develop business. These workers must rapidly getting a training session especially in IT and computing skills. It is because now difficult to find a job specifically suit existing skills and education. Next point is unavoidable time period delays in a process to find a new occupation in the market sector. So, it may take a long time for the application to be approved. An instance, someone who freshly graduates from a university is not supposed to be confident and expects to find a job right away that meets their skills, or someone who just quit their recent job. Lastly, there is an effect that gonna happen to the unemployment. The first is bad consequences on mental health. They may be more concerned and worried about their job since the risk of losing the job is greater, or they might be hesitant to seek other employment because they have an assumption that they have been chosen to be employed compared to anyone else who has fired. So that it is very difficult to find a job at this moment because of the virus that is widely spreading.
How to overcome the problem of inflation in China? There are two ways to overcome the problem of inflation in China. First, fiscal policy. Second, monetary policy. In 1994, the government embarked on broad fiscal reforms to fight against declining tax or GDP ratation, which hampered the government's ability to pursue macroeconomic and retribution policy. The culmination of the reform was the new taxation system and implementation of tax sharing schemes, where the most profitable source of tax revenue were administered by the central government, such as the value-add tax and the enterprise income tax. The policy has contributed to a steady increase in income, where the reading from GDP has jumped from 10.8% in 1994 to 22.7% in 2013. Although spending follows suit and increased at double digit over the same period, the fiscal deficit continued to the examined in the period in 1994 until 2013. The government fiscal deficit averaged 1.0% of GDP. In 2014, the National People's Congress passed an amendment to the budget law, which allowed provincial government to issue bonds directly and increase transparency. This move helped local government to increase debt in the bond market. This can help local government in obtaining source of income in addition to relying on land sale and direct loans. China government debt is almost entirely denominated in local currency and owned by domestic institution. Furthermore, the government has cash reserve equivalent to 6% of GDP in the People's Bank of China. This situation could help the China government to protect the economy from the government debt crisis. Second, monetary policy. Under the line of the State Council, the People's Bank of China have formulated and implemented monetary policy, prevented and resolved financial crisis, and maintaining financial stability. The main purpose of the PBOC is ensure domestic price stability, promote economic growth, and manage the exchange rate. The state set guideline target for GDP, money supply, consumer price index, and credit growth at the beginning of each year. The PBOC policy rate is the 1-year loan rate. During the National People's Congress in March 2013, the central bank has pledged to maintain a prudent monetary policy while making policy adjustment in a timely manner. The central bank also manages the money supply through open market operation, which is conducted in domestic and foreign currency with the discurrency and corporate repo and reverse repo, government security, and also PBOC bills. The central bank can also influence lending and liquidity by using reserve requirement retention. The central bank can also use other instruments such as short-term loans, short-term liquidity, and the operation of fixed loan facility. It's important to manage and adjusting liquidity in the banking system. Bold reform on interest rate and monetary policy management is the agenda of China top authorities in order to adopt a more market-driven approach. How to overcome the problem of unemployment in China? There are 3 ways. First, to encourage the employment in China to create their own jobs. This is important to help them to escape from poverty. This action can also provide employment opportunities through the assistance of the new industry. Therefore, China government can create this measure if China reduce and exempt administrative charge to the people. In addition, providing loans with discounted interest can necessarily reduce the burden of administrator in managing employment for those who meet the qualification that have been determined with a certain period of the time. This can fulfill the employment principle of workers finding their own job, employment through market regulation, and employment promoted by the government. Second, China government can also encourage enterprise to observe workers. This is important for China to overcome the problem of employment, especially for small processing enterprise in the serving, commercial, and trading sector. Should they recruit urban vulnerable people with a set amount, they can enjoy related tax reduction and exemption, including social insurance subsidy with